Good evening. My name is Zion Richard, and I am a freshman psychology major from Greenville, Mississippi. Today, I have the pleasure of sharing some comparisons and contrasts between two very interesting plays, Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett and Gods in the Ivory Towers by Bill F. Indy. These two remarkable plays were very interesting and conveyed deeper meanings that I'm excited to expand on today. The plays describe many aspects of life challenges. Some parts of these plays were very confusing to me, but with further research, I realized some of the messages embedded in these artworks. Both Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett and Gods in the Ivory Towers by Bill F. Indy explore themes of stagnation, institutional failure, and the human search for meaning, though they do so in very different settings and styles. Samuel Beckett's play presents two characters stuck in an endless cycle of waiting, using absurd dialogue and a barren landscape to reflect the existential void and futility of action. In contrast, Bill F. Indy sets his play on a corrupt university, where characters like Ingwa confront the moral emptiness of those in power. While Waiting for Godot focuses on the personal and philosophical, portraying life as a series of repetitive actions without resolution, Gods in the Ivory Towers addresses societal corruption and the struggle to uphold integrity in the face of systemic decay. Both plays ultimately question whether truth, progress, or redemption are possible in environments that seem designed to prevent them. When first watching the play, Waiting for Godot, I was confused and honestly bored. Waiting for Godot is often seen as a boring play because nothing happens, at least in the traditional sense. There's no clear plot, climax, or resolution. It felt like I was watching an old cartoon, but not the kind of cartoon where you sit in front of the TV all the day. This was the kind of cartoon that you fell asleep on. When thinking deeper into this play and doing a little research, I saw some of the messages that Mr. Beckett put into this work. Waiting for Godot centers around two characters, Vladimir and Estrogen, who are very funny, might I add. They endlessly wait for someone named Godot. For some odd reason, Godot never shows up, and the play never gives an apparent reason why these two characters are searching for him in the first place. Moving on, as Vladimir and Estrogen are waiting, they engage in various conversations, arguments, and play games. Now, while watching this, all of these activities seemed meaningless and failed attempts to pass the time. Upon further understanding of this play, I realized that that's exactly what it was. Beckett deliberately strips away traditional elements of drama, action, resolution, and even character development to reflect the emptiness of existence. This is captured in the famous exchange, "Nothing happens, nobody comes, nobody goes, it's awful." The line itself becomes a commentary on the play's structure. By making the audience sit through long stretches of silence, pointless banter, and unresolved tension, Samuel Beckett forces them to confront the same frustration, uncertainty, and meaninglessness that his characters feel. In this way, the play's boredom becomes a powerful tool for exploring existential themes. In my opinion, this play questions human life. It was interesting to see this play, and even more interesting to see the similarities and differences in comparison with Gods in the Ivory Towers. In addition, Gods in the Ivory Towers was no easy read either. Although I did find it easier than Waiting for Godot, this play has its nooks and crannies to work through as well. Gods in the Ivory Towers is a drama that critiques the corruption, hypocrisy, and moral decay within academic institutions. This play is centered around the protagonist, Ingwa, as he navigates the road to success in a world that was not so fair to him. Set in a fictional African university, the play exposes how those in power, professors, administrators, and officials, abuse their positions for personal gain, manipulating systems meant to serve truth and education. The title refers to the supposed gods who sit in their ivory towers, detached from ethical responsibility and the real struggles of students and honest scholars. Ingwa stands out as a voice of integrity, challenging the corrupt leadership and defending academic values. Through sharp dialogue and layered symbolism, Bill F. Indy presents a powerful condemnation of institutional failure, while also highlighting the courage it takes to speak truth in a decaying system. The play highlights the tension between the pursuit of knowledge and the moral responsibilities that come with it. Throughout the play, Ingwa was very much made aware of the challenges he would face in pursuing knowledge. In this production, Ingwa is challenged to stick to his beliefs and the consequences of his actions. Gods in the Ivory Towers represents the struggles of life and making decisions to stay true to yourself or suffering from that. One comparison I noticed between these plays was how all characters face hardship. The character in Gods in the Ivory Towers, Ingwa, faced institutional and moral hardship. Ingwa must navigate a corrupt academic system that punishes honesty and rewards manipulation. His struggle is not against the absurdity of life, but against the crushing weight of injustice and moral compromise. Another challenge that Ingwa faced was the pressure to not be labeled. His dad was labeled a maniac, and this was also one of the main reasons he decided to pursue a higher knowledge. Ingwa was also faced with the challenge of sexual harassment. His female professor, who was supposed to monitor the progress of his education, tried to seduce him. Not only did she try and fail to seduce him, she lied to her boss, saying that he was the one that came onto her. In Waiting for Godot, Vladimir and Estrogen face the hardship of existential despair. They are stuck in an endless cycle of waiting, unsure of why they are there or what they are waiting for. Their pain is both physical and emotional, as seen when Estrogen complains, "Nothing to be done," a line that reflects the futility and hopelessness of their condition. They became restless and impatient, and at one point, they jokingly think about hanging themselves from a tree. Despite the different settings, both plays portray characters who suffer in systems beyond their control. One contrast I noticed between these two plays was the differences in their life situations. In Waiting for Godot, both characters, Vladimir and Estrogen, seemed like they had no purpose in life. They would spend their days waiting for someone named Godot, who never comes. In fact, it seemed as though they were waiting for Godot to tell them their purpose in life. Their lives revolve around this endless waiting, and they often question the point of their existence. This lack of purpose is central to the play's absurdist message, highlighting the human struggle to find meaning in a seemingly meaningless world. Both Vladimir and Estrogen meander around endlessly and talk about irrelevant things. However, the character in Gods in the Ivory Towers, Ingwa, was very passionate about life, and he had a clear moral and social purpose. He was very motivated to accomplish his goals, which differed from the characters in Waiting for Godot. Ingwa is driven by a desire to uphold truth, integrity, and academic justice in a corrupt university system. While Vladimir and Estrogen are passive and uncertain, Ingwa is active and committed to change, even when it brings personal risk. This difference reflects how Samuel Beckett explores internal, philosophical, and purposelessness, while Indy focuses on external, societal responsibility. The contrast reveals two different ways of confronting hardship. One, through existential endurance, the other through moral resistance. The difference in settings of these plays also caught my attention. The settings of Waiting for Godot and Gods in the Ivory Towers are vastly different and reflect the core themes of each play. Waiting for Godot is set in a vague, desolate outdoor space with no clear location or time period. It had a thin trunk, a few skinny branches, and not even one leaf. This was also the tree that Vladimir and Estrogen wanted to hang themselves on at one point. In this setting, there was also one stone rock, and this is the rock where Vladimir and Estrogen first met. This setting was bland, depressing, and gave the audience no initial excitement. I believe this setting also contributed to the complete boredom of the characters. This minimalist, abstract setting emphasizes the play's existential tone, creating a sense of emptiness, timelessness, and universality. It strips away distractions, focusing the audience on the characters' internal struggles and the absurdity of their weight. In contrast, Gods in the Ivory Towers takes place in a realistic institutional setting, a university environment within a corrupt societal system. This grounded specific setting allows Bill F. Indy to explore social and political issues, such as academic corruption, power abuse, and moral decay. While Beckett's setting reflects the inner emptiness of human existence, Bill F. Indy's setting reflects the external corruption of societal structures. The character development in both plays, Waiting for Godot and Gods in the Ivory Towers, differ significantly in both structure and purpose. In Waiting for Godot, the characters, Vladimir and Estrogen, are static and show little to no growth throughout the play. They repeat the same actions, conversations, and thoughts day after day, trapped in a cycle of waiting for a person who never arrives. This lack of development is deliberate, reflecting the play's absurdist and existential themes. Life doesn't always offer change, resolution, or growth. In contrast, Ingwa's beliefs and values are tested as he navigates the corrupt university system, and his choices reflect a conscious effort to resist wrongdoing and uphold integrity. Ingwa had no choice but to develop as a character. He was very naive in thinking it would be an easy journey to success. He also ignored numerous warning signs that he was in a corrupt institution. He was so passionate about his goals, he continued thinking that his journey would not have a few bumps in the road. Because of his unwillingness to take action about the red flags presented to him, and his desire to reach his goals, life hit him like a truck. He was put in a real-life nightmare with his professor and the university's administration, and was forced to realize that the world is not fair. While Beckett's characters remain stuck and unchanged to emphasize the futility of existence, Indy's characters are more dynamic, shaped by the ethical and political challenges around them. A similarity I noticed between these two plays was the repetition. Waiting for Godot is characterized by its repetitive dialogue and actions. emphasizing the monotony of existence. The most iconic line in the play to support this statement is a conversation between Vladimir and Estrogen. This conversation was held twice at the ends of both Act 1 and Act 2. Estrogen says to Vladimir, "Let's go." Vladimir says, "We can't." Estrogen asks, "Why not?" You can probably guess what Vladimir says next. But if you can't, he says, "We're waiting for Godot." Similarly, Dr. Indy's play reflects the repetitive nature of corrupt systems or practices and personal struggles. In Gods in the Ivory Towers, repetition appears more in the patterns of systemic corruption and institutional behavior. Ingwa repeatedly faces the same moral challenges, and corruption is shown as a cycle that sustains itself. Even when characters like Ingwa try to resist, they encounter the same corrupt practices, highlighting how deeply ingrained and repetitive the abuse of power is within this system. While Beckett uses repetition to reflect internal and existential stagnation, Indy uses it to show the structural and societal repetition of injustice. The dialogue in Waiting for Godot and Gods in the Ivory Towers differs significantly in style, purpose, and tone, reflecting each play's themes and dramatic approach. In Waiting for Godot, the dialogue is fragmented, repetitive, and often nonsensical. Characters Vladimir and Estrogen frequently interrupt each other, forget what they're saying, and speak in circular patterns. For example, Estrogen says, "Nothing to be done," capturing the play's absurdist mood. Their conversations often loop back on themselves or repeat with some variations emphasizing the pointlessness of their way and the lack of progression in their lives. They also engage in banter and wordplay that's often humorous, but ultimately goes nowhere. It mirrors how people fill time with small talk to avoid confronting deeper fears or boredom. In contrast, the dialogue in Gods in the Ivory Towers is more direct, structured, and rhetorical. Characters like Ingwa use speech as a tool for resistance and clarity. For example, Ingwa's line, "I came here to talk academics, no more, no less." This shows his firm stance and moral clarity. The dialogue in Indy's play serves to debate ideas, expose corruption, and challenge power, often taking on a more intellectual and confrontational tone. In examining Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett and Gods in the Ivory Towers by Bill F. Indy, it becomes evident that both plays, though rooted in vastly different cultural and historical contexts, speak to the universal struggles of humanity, particularly the quest for meaning, the failure of leadership, and the complexity of human hope. Beckett's absurdist masterpiece presents characters immobilized by the anticipation of a salvation that never arrives. Conversely, Indy's drama critiques the intellectual and political elite in post-colonial Africa, exposing the hypocrisy and moral decay of those in power who are expected to bring about progress. While Waiting for Godot is stripped down to bare language and action to emphasize the absurdity and stagnation, Gods in the Ivory Tower uses rich symbolism and biting satire to confront social and political failure. Despite their difference in style and intent, both plays serve as a profound commentaries on human disillusionment and the dangers of misplaced faith in a god, a system, or an elite. Ultimately, they challenged audiences to confront the voids in their own societies and to question the institutions and ideologies that promise change yet deliver stasis or betrayal. Thank you.